StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. What is that? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is lies are free and truth is expensive. Before we get into this, let me remind you of two things. First of all, my daily motivation and Monday motivation text. When we start sending this message out again, you'll be getting it if you're in my text community. It is free of charge to be in the community. This message is guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your week or your day. Text me at this number, 305-384-6894. As I said, we are not actively sending it right now, but we will be very soon. So when we do, as long as you're in my text community, if you text me, you'll be in it. And just verify, or once we get it active again, you'll be able to verify, and then everything will go from there. Just text me at that number right there, so you got it taken care of. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That's the place where I do all my coaching. If you would like to work with me directly, have me as your direct coach. Our framework is based around mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability. We help people in the business space with your personal stuff, with your interpersonal stuff, your communication stuff, your leadership stuff, your brand building stuff, your sales stuff, your money making things. All that happens in Work on Your Game University. In other words, anything you ever heard me talk about on this show, if you would like me to coach you directly on doing it, I will coach you directly on doing it. That's what happens in Work on Your Game University. So again, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is down below in the description to this video. That all out the way, let's get into today's topic, which is lies are free and truth is expensive. Now, I've done episodes explaining why in the world that we live in today, you need to be extra vigilant about the information that you take in these days, the sources that you trust. In other words, where you're getting your information from, and what you choose to believe, and for what reasons that you choose to believe. Sometimes people are believing things for reasons that are not very logical, let's just say, for lack of a better term, and I'm being nice, at least for now. Today, I'm going to explain to you why it is so easy and so cheap to lie to yourself or to accept a lie that someone else tells to you. And it's so easy for you to get other people to accept lies that you tell to them. And to accept these things when people give you this stuff or when others give it to you, yet it is much harder. Even though it's easy to accept a lie, it's much harder to express a truth, and it's much harder for any of us to accept a truth. I'm going to get into that and why that is here today. Why it's easy to accept lies, but it's harder to accept the truth. And it's easy to hand out lies, but it's harder to hand out the truth. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, lies are free and the truth is expensive. Number one, most of the time when people are being lied to or they are telling a lie, those lies either make or keep people very comfortable in the place in which they already exist. This is the reason why lies are pretty easy to get across and they're easy to absorb. And that means even for you, because a lie allows us to stay in the place that we already are and allows us to stay comfortable in our mental comfort zones, the place that we already exist. That's what a lie does. A lie does not push you to do anything other than what you are already doing most of the time. Now, somebody could lie and maybe move you to action, of course. But the lies that I'm talking about are lies that people tell themselves and that they absorb that allow them to, again, feel comfortable in the space that they're in, which means they don't need to change. The reason why people lie to themselves and the reason why we lie to ourselves or accept lies from others is because usually the lie allows us to stay comfortable exactly where we are and to keep thinking the way that we are already thinking. In other words, we don't need to rouse ourselves or move ourselves in any way when we're being lied to because we're already comfortable in that space and we can continue doing what we're already doing. Or the lie gives us permission to do the thing that we want to do, even though that thing may not be the main thing that we need to do. See, the lie just allows us to stay in our comfort zone. Everything I'm describing here is the comfort zone. Lies are usually emotional and illogical. The lies that we accept are usually emotional and illogically based because emotions are much more easily accepted and acted upon than logic is. It takes a whole lot of logic to move somebody to action. It takes a little bit of emotion to move a person to action. So logic and logical thinking, critical thinking, it takes mental effort. Intellect takes mental effort. You have to think in order to use your intellect. You have to think to use logic and to use rational thinking. Emotion takes no thinking whatsoever. Emotion just goes straight to the emotional centers of the brain, which bypass logic completely and they overpower logic, which means if you are emotional and logical at the same time, the emotions are going to win. You don't even notice the logic. You could be the most logical person in the room, but if someone's able to make you emotional, then your logic goes out the window and you will follow your emotions unless you have trained yourself to manage your emotions. and take control of them and direct them where you want them to go rather than where they want to go. And that's a skill that can be developed. I teach you how to do that in my Bulletproof Mindset program inside of Work on Your Game University. So logic has very little energy behind it. There's not a whole lot of energy behind logic. And rational, reasonable, and logical action is a multi-step process. I mean, you have to stair step somebody up the stairway in order to move them to action if you're only using logic, or hope that they've already done that themselves in order for your logic to kind of be the last push that they need to get over the threshold. But to get someone to take emotional action is a single step process. Just got to get them emotional. And sometimes it only takes one quick little thing gets a person emotional enough to move them to action. Again, it takes a lot of logic to move somebody to action. It takes a little bit of emotion to move a person to action. This is why it's not a fair fight when you're fighting emotion against logic. It's not a fair fight. So this is why most people make their decisions based on emotions and not on logic. And no one is immune to this. So even if you're a super logical individual, even someone like myself, super logical, you consider yourself super rational, you consider yourself a critical thinker and intellectual, whatever. If you want to move people to action, you should learn to sprinkle some emotion in with your logic, because it is much more effective at moving people to action. Even though your logic may be good at informing people and giving them what they need to know and telling people, what's true and what they need to understand, it doesn't move people to action nearly as well as emotion. So if you're a super logical person, learn to get some emotion involved in what you do, because it will help get your message across much more strongly, and it will help you move people to action based on the logic, but you get the emotion to kind of get them going. The emotion is kind of like the gas pedal. Logic is a steering wheel. Remember that emotions are great gas pedals, terrible steering wheels. So don't do everything all off of emotion, because that's going to lead to a reckless, what's the word? A reckless existence, which you don't want. But if you can do things based on logic and sprinkle some emotion in, that's the right combination. You just got to find the right mix. And depending on who you're talking to and what you're talking about, that mix can be different in different circumstances. Point number 2, today's topic, once again, lies are free and truth is expensive. Number 2, truth is often uncomfortable. See, that's the challenge with truth, is that it's uncomfortable. The truth became uncomfortable. You know when the truth became uncomfortable? Anybody know? There was an exact moment in mankind's history when the truth became uncomfortable. And everybody is familiar with this moment. I'll tell you what it is in a moment. But does anybody know what it is? Anybody know before I tell you? Okay, none of you know. Here's the answer. The truth became uncomfortable the moment that Eve bit into the apple in the Garden of Eden. All right, that's one of the first stories, actually. The second story that was told in the Bible. First story is God creating everything. And the second story, weaved into the first story, is God creating man and woman to be a helpmate to the man. And then when the woman got deceived by the serpent and bit into that apple in the garden, all of a sudden lies became easy to accept and truth became hard to accept right there at that moment. Read the book of Genesis and the Bible will tell you all about it. It was from that point forward that man was more susceptible to lies and that felt good and made us comfortable than truth that helped us but made us uncomfortable. This is the exact moment that it happened. If you know anything about the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, once they bit into the apple, now lies became much more palatable to them, and truth became much more difficult to accept. And they immediately didn't like the truth. They didn't like the truth that they were naked, so what they did, they went and got fig leaves to cover themselves up. They didn't know that they were naked before they bit into that apple. So when God came across them and found them in the Garden of Eden and said, "Why are you covered up?" Because God knew what they were not supposed to know, which was that they were naked. But when they bit into the apple, they realized that they were naked and they start covering themselves up. God said, "How'd you know you were naked? Who told you that?" And that's when they had to spill the beans and tell God the truth of what happened, that Eve allowed herself to be deceived by the snake. And then Adam stupidly followed what the woman said instead of taking the lead. And this is when all hell broke loose, literally. Read the book. If I got it wrong, somebody let me know. That's what happened. So the truth helps us, but it makes us uncomfortable in the process. And it was way back in the book of Genesis. Whenever you believe that happened, whatever time frame you want to give it, that is when man, when I say man, I mean humans, became uncomfortable with truth and much more comfortable with lies. That is why you will always have a bigger audience that can go further telling people things that they want to hear rather than telling people things that they need to hear. If you want to go really, really far in terms of your reach and you just want to have a big audience, regardless of who they are and what they care about and what exactly is the reason why they're coming to you, tell people things that make them comfortable. Tell people things that they want to hear. You will have a much bigger audience than if you tell people things they need to hear. Doesn't mean you can't carve out a nice living and have a business and success and all that stuff, telling people what they need to hear. Like in my line of work, I tell people what they need to hear. I don't tell people what they want to hear. If I wanted to 10x my audience, I would stop telling y'all things you need to hear. I would start telling you things you want to hear. Some of you would stick around. Some of you will go away. And my audience will get a whole lot bigger. because most people rather hear things that they want to hear rather than things they need to hear because it's much more comfortable. It allows you to stay in the mental spaces you're already in, the emotional spaces you're already in. Now, if I tell you something that you need to hear now, I'm forcing you to get out of where you're comfortable. Most people don't want to do that. They will push back vehemently against this. This is why truth is expensive. Right? It costs money to tell the truth. It costs everything: money, time, attention, energy, and focus. You got to give all of those. You got to pay considerably with all of those if you want to tell people the truth. If you want to tell people lies, then you don't have to use too much of those things because the people will give it to you. They'll give you time, money, attention, energy, and focus if you tell them lies. Tell them the truth. Now you gotta put the money up first. You gotta put the resources on the table first. That's how it works. So you can go a lot further, any of you, just telling people what they want to hear. If I simply told people things that they wanted to hear, I think I have the verbal ability to do so. I can have a lot more customers, a lot more clients. I couldn't be selling the same stuff, but I could have a bigger volume, a bigger number of customers. I don't know what I'd be selling them. It'd be different than what I sell now, but I could have a whole lot more people just buying my stuff if I was just telling them what they wanted to hear. Basically, I would sell them stuff that was based around what they wanted to hear. I would take these books that you see behind me. Most of these books telling people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. So it'd be a whole different set of books, but I have a lot more customers, a lot more sales if I just wanted to do that, but I couldn't do it. It would go against my personal principles. But there are people who will do it, and maybe that is aligned with their principles. We ain't all the same. But see, when I start telling people things they need to hear, what happens is some people get driven away and my audience narrows. I have a much more narrow audience because I tell people what they need to hear rather than telling people what they want to hear. And I'm okay with that. I actively made that choice 20 years ago when I was talking to basketball players. I'm going to tell you what's actually real, not what makes you feel good. I will put content out in the basketball space in 20 years ago. And I would tell some player, I would either be speaking in general terms, talking to players in general, or I'd be talking to a specific person who asked me a question. And I would tell them some truth that they needed to hear, some no bullshit that they needed to hear so that they could look in the mirror and hold themselves accountable rather than looking out the window and holding or calling themselves holding everybody else accountable, like their teammates, their parents, their coaches, their school teachers, etc., for their circumstance. And I would tell them the truth. And invariably, every time I did that, some allegedly well-meaning individual will come along behind what I said and tell them what they wanted to hear after I told them what they needed to hear. And often what would happen, about 80% of the time, the person to whom we were speaking, the player who was asking the question, they would go out of their way to thank the person who told them what they wanted to hear while not thanking me for telling them what they needed to hear. Well, I wonder what happened to most of those players. I wonder where they are now. I wonder where their careers went based on the topic that was being discussed. I'll tell you where it went: nowhere. Because if you are more susceptible to hearing things that you want to hear rather than things that you need to hear, it feels good in the moment, but it's not going to be good for you. And those are two different things. And my job over here in the work on your game world, my job is not to make you feel good. My job is to help you perform good and produce good results. That's our job here. If you happen to feel good in the process, cool, but that's not the goal. All right, it's not my goal to make you feel good. My goal is to help you perform good. And when you perform good, you get paid good. You get the results you want, you get the rewards you want. That's the purpose over here. And understand everything in life has a trade-off. There are no perfect scenarios. So a scenario that makes you feel good right now, is it going to help you do good in the long run? Probably not. Why? Because everything in life has a trade-off. And as the saying goes, success is hard on the front end, easy on the back end. And failure is easy on the front end, hard on the back end. So which one are you signing up for? The stuff that makes it easy for you to feel good about yourself, or the stuff that makes it hard for you to listen to, but if you take it to heart, will actually help you get to where you want to go? That's a choice that you get to make every single day. Moment by moment, you get to make that choice. And unfortunately, too many people make the choice that actually takes you backwards. As a coach, for example, and I'm talking business coach, not sports coach, I decided a long time ago that I would rather take the latter than the former. In other words, tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And also told you in my episode on the race hustler, if you never heard my episode where I talked about the race hustlers, I believe it was episode 1824, but let me make sure that's correct. Episode 1824, when I talked about the race hustler. These are people who make their money by racializing every subject and then drawing a whole bunch of attention to the fact they racialize the subject. Again, a whole bunch of people who are all focused on race, and no matter what the point is, even if it makes no logical sense, they make their whole business model is doing that over and over and over again. And the good news about being a race hustler is that you will never run out of material. There'll always be something to race hustle about. So when I did that episode on race hustler, if I wanted to get into the game and telling people lies just to build a following, I could do a damn good job of it. I could be an amazing race hustler if I wanted to play that game. But again, it goes against my personal principles. I think a lot of what race hustlers do is complete bullshit, and that's why I call them out on it. And I can do a better job of race hustling than many active race hustlers do right now. But instead, I call these people out on their bullshit, and I accept that the masses of people don't want to hear what I'm saying. I'm completely okay with that. I ain't for everybody. Work on your game is not for everybody, in case any of you didn't know. I'm okay working with a minority of people who do want to hear it. And anytime you're hearing something that seems to logically and rationally make sense, yet at the same time is making you uncomfortable, you should ask yourself where the truth is in that thing that you're being exposed to. Where's the truth in this? Even if you don't think the whole thing is true, is part of it true? Is there some truth within what I'm being told right now? Might not be 100%, but maybe there's something in it that's true. And you need to ask yourself the question. All right, this is one of those good questions you should ask yourself. Okay, somebody just said something to me, maybe a little bit uncomfortable. Is there any truth within this? Maybe 90% of it is not true, but there's 10% of truth in there. Where is it? Even if they didn't articulate it particularly well, where is the truth? Because you're smart enough to find it. Even if they couldn't find it and they couldn't articulate it well, you can. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is lies are free, truth is expensive. Number 3, most humans, being average and due to the law of inertia, most humans are average due to the law of inertia, would rather be left alone and allowed to believe a lie than they would to be disturbed by an accurate truth. Most humans would rather be left alone to live with the lies that they want to believe than to be disturbed by being told a truth that they don't want to hear. This is the reason why most people are average. The law of inertia. Object in motion remains in motion. Object not in motion shall stay not in motion until or unless acted upon by an outside force that includes your mind. If your mind is stagnant in a certain way of thinking, it is stagnated in a certain way of thinking that is based on bullshit, you are more likely to stay there because it's comfortable than you are to allow yourself to be moved out of that position because it's uncomfortable. This is why most people don't change. They just get older, fatter, and uglier. That's what happens to most people in life. Any of you graduated high school more than 10 years ago, don't worry about your high school classmates. Don't go look them up on Facebook. I'll tell you exactly what happened to them. They're the same person they were last time you saw them. They just got older, fatter, and uglier. Nothing else about them has changed. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. Maybe you're an exception. I'm an exception. But most people are not exceptions. Most people are the rule. You get what I'm saying? The exceptions do not disprove the rule. They prove the rule. Because the fact you can point out the exceptions is the reason why there's a rule. Everybody get it? See, this is the problem with telling people the truth. It's uncomfortable. And most people don't like to be made uncomfortable. They will get mad at you for making them uncomfortable. So you got to be careful who you're giving the truth to, because not everybody wants it. Even though everybody says they want the truth, most people don't actually want the truth. People will attack you for exposing their minds to something that they wanted to stay ignorant to. Let me say that one more time. People will attack you for exposing their minds to something that they wanted to be ignorant to. In other words, some people don't want to know the truth of things. They would rather live with the lie, knowing that what they're living with is a lie. They don't want to know the truth because the truth will make them uncomfortable, and the truth makes you responsible because now you know it. Now you know about it. You see, the thing is, most people are not as dumb as they may appear to be. Many people know when they are telling themselves a lie, even if they're only telling themselves a lie subconsciously. And in my line of work, what I do these days as a coach, I talk to people all the time who are telling themselves some complete bullshit, and they are not so stupid as to not know what they're doing. They know they're telling themselves a lie. It's just that they don't want to be waking up out of their stupor by being told the truth. So they actually end up resenting people like me because I'll tell them the truth. That's what happens. This is why work on your game ain't for everybody. All right, some people don't want to be told the truth. They rather just live with a lie. Most people rather stay comfortable with what's not true because it doesn't put them on a hook to do or think anything differently. They are just okay being okay. Why? Human beings are just lazy. All right, human beings, we are lazy. We are wired to conserve energy. This goes back to the caveman days when we were saving energy just in case we had to run away from a saber-tooth tiger or fight a rival caveman. So we just want to save energy all day, every day. See, we don't live in that world anymore, but mentally it's still part of our wiring to be lazy. Save as much energy as possible. Mental energy, I'm talking about in today's context. So when you tell someone the truth, as soon as they register what you told them, they might get mad at you because now you put them on the hook to do something about what they now know and are now aware of. See, they'd much rather you just left them alone in their feigned ignorance. Most people would rather be left alone in ignorance than woken up with truth. I should say that one again. That was a good one. Most people would rather be left alone in ignorance than woken up with truth. This is how you can have someone who's physically overweight and you go preach to them, or society preaches to them that the new thing is body positivity. I heard this shit, body positivity. So I believe it was, who was it? think it was Gatorade. Yeah, Gatorade definitely did this, but other companies have done it as well. I see it with, I think Dove body soap did it. I think Nike might have gotten involved in this nonsense. There's a Lululemon store not far from where I live. I see the store, and they have these body positive mannequins inside the store. At least I've seen them sometimes. This whole new thing is body positivity, which is basically taking obese people and telling them that it's okay. Just be positive about your body, not that you're fat and you're about to die 20 years earlier than you should if you don't get your fat ass in the gym. So now they call it body positivity. This is complete bullshit. It's a softening of the language in order to make people feel good about something that is nonsense. That's what it is. That's what body positivity means. Just like you call a teenage girl deciding that she's going to be a boy and cutting off her breast tissue. They call that, what do they call it? Gender affirming care. It's bullshit. It's child mutilation is what it is. Or they say when a woman is going to abort her baby, in other words, end the life that she voluntarily made by having consensual sex with a man, unprotected, they're calling that not gender affirming. What are they calling it? They call it reproductive freedom. Bullshit. That's abortion. You're aborting a life that you created. That's what it's called. Call it what it is. So you see how the truth can make people uncomfortable, even when it's just the language. The action hasn't changed. It's just the language around it. And this is the bullshit that people have bought into, and now they're trying to force feed it to you. Won't happen over here, just so you know. So people, this body positivity thing, all right, and people are happy with that. And they'll get angry if you're telling you that they're going to die earlier than they should, or you're going to have a heart attack when you're 50, when you should be living to your 90 just because your fat ass won't work out. And you're trying to talk about some body positivity. It's not body positivity, that's body negativity. You're about to die. All right, dying is the most negative thing that can happen to you, especially if it's happening before your time. That's not body positive. What the hell are you talking about? Why would you promote that to somebody? Why would you do that? Because lies are free and truth is expensive. See, if you told them the truth and everybody else is telling them a lie, which person do you think they're going to like better? Person who lies to them. And let me be clear. Everybody who's listening to this, you are just as guilty of this as everybody else is. You got to catch yourself. You are just, let me not say guilty. Let me back up. You are just as susceptible to this because some of you are on point. You listen to the show often enough, you're in my world, you consume my material, then you've gotten enough of this message to make sure you're much less open to this nonsense than most people. But you are still susceptible because you're human. I'm susceptible because I'm human. We're all susceptible to this because we're human. This is why mental conditioning matters so much. What you're conditioning your mind with on a consistent basis matters so much so you don't get caught up in the cascade of the bullshit because they'll keep throwing it at you. So don't laugh too hard at this when I'm giving you these examples here because you could be the one just as guilty as these other people I'm talking about. Because we all have blind spots. Human beings, we all have blind spots. You could be just as guilty as everybody else. So don't laugh. You might be the one I'm talking about here. So let's recap today's class, which is lies are free. The truth is expensive. Number one, most lies make or keep people comfortable in the place in which they already exist. And the reason people lie to themselves because it allows us to stay comfortable exactly where we are because human beings are mentally lazy. Number two, truth is often uncomfortable. It became uncomfortable the moment that Eve and Adam bit into the apple in the Garden of Eden. And as soon as they learned that there were such things as lies and truth, they didn't even know until they bit into that damn apple. And from there, all hell broke loose. As a side note, because the man wasn't doing his job as a leader and he was letting the woman take the lead. That's really why it happened, but that's a different story for a different day. The whole point being, lies are expensive. And I mean, lies are free. Truth is expensive. A lot of people don't want to hear the truth because it will make us uncomfortable. Most people would rather be comfortable. Number three, most people, being average and due to the law of inertia, which affects everybody, rather be left alone believing a lie than to be disturbed by an accurate truth. Most people don't want to hear what is accurate. They just want to hear what suits them and what jives with what they are already thinking. You need to catch yourself for this because you are just as susceptible to the bullshit and to the lies as every other human is. And this is why mental conditioning is an ongoing process. It is not something that happens one time. That's why you need to get into the Bulletproof Mindset program, which is the first thing you're going to get when you come into Work on Your Game University. That is at workonyourgameuniversity.com. Also, make sure you text me. See my text community numbers down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre, all